Hello, Out Entrepreneurs. Rhodes Perry here, and welcome to episode number 7 of The Out Entrepreneur, a weekly podcast where I get to interview today's most inspiring LGBTQ bosses crushing it in business. Today, I am so happy to be interviewing Danny Rosen, who is a friend, colleague, and fellow social justice champion. Danny, are you ready to inspire fellow Out bosses?
I sure hope so.
Excellent. No doubt that you will. So Danny is a passionate social justice advocate. She has been on her own personal gender odyssey for over 30 years and currently identifies as genderqueer. She has over 20 years of citizen volunteer engagement with law enforcement and criminal justice agencies. Currently, she is working closely with 2 state agencies in Oregon on developing policies and trainings related to transgender and gender nonconforming individuals. Danny's consulting business is centered on leveraging her experiences within law enforcement, justice, and other agencies to develop inclusive policies and understanding. She focuses on safety, respect, and awareness. I love that. Danny, thank you so much for being on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Right now, you're doing such amazing work, working within government agencies and systems. If you could, just share just a little bit more about your business and what makes it unique.
Well, I guess it's out of need that I recognized that there's specific audiences that are difficult to interact with or engage with. And I have a rather unique relationship with several law enforcement agencies and criminal justice organizations that I've developed over 20 years. And because of that, I've got just a casual conversation level with many individuals, and I'm able to have a different kind of interaction with people. And that evolved into more direct kinds of engagement. I'm particularly interested in young people, and that gave me a focus. I was asked to be on an advisory board that deals with juvenile offenders, and because of that, I got involved with leading what I would think of as a support group in a way within one of the facilities here in Oregon. And out of that developed a deeper interaction with the administration. And now it's given me an opportunity to develop training and have direct input into policies and procedures that are in development.
You hit on a lot of really important things there for most entrepreneurs. There was a need. Someone wasn't meeting that need. You had the relationships already in place, and you decided to move forward and fill the need with your expertise and services. So thank you so much for doing that. What at this moment has you most inspired in doing your work within your business?
The growing awareness of the individuals that I work with that you can't have policies in a isolated agency, that you have to have what I would call a continuum of care. When you think of the kinds of support, particularly in this case for transgender and gender nonconforming individuals, particularly incarcerated, there's a process on the front end before they are in a facility, and then there's a process on the back end. And you can't have just part of that. You've got to consider how that whole system affects individuals. And we're working on broadening that interaction and awareness. So that's becoming part of the more expansive part of what my business is starting to develop more of those relationships and help those other ends of the spectrum to be aware and implement policies and procedures that are complementary.
Just the fact that transgender and gender diverse people are around and the sincere desire to make more inclusive spaces for many of us is something that is absolutely inspiring. Now, for a number of out bosses that I know, it seems like we've arrived at starting our businesses for one of 2 reasons. The first is that we either felt a calling to pursue a purpose-driven idea, and then the other is that we just couldn't stomach fitting ourselves into a workplace culture that doesn't value who we are. So I'm curious to know which one of these scenarios resonates the most with you.
I had been doing some informal trainings, and that became more expansive. And as that grew, the formality of contractual obligations and other pieces really required me to get involved and become more of a formalized business. So it's kind of, there's a need that wasn't being met. It was being met partially, but it didn't have the structure that really makes it easier to interact with agencies and organizations that expect that contractual kind of relationship. And so because of that, when you get a 28-page contract from an agency, you really start looking at, I need to be aware of how I am coming across as a professional. And part of that is developing a business model that extends that capability and personality that you have, that's drawing them to ask you to work with them. And then it formalizes that foundational base that says, this is a business we want to do business with. We want to engage with them in various ways.
And on the topic of your business, you're relatively new in your consulting firm. So at this point, you're more of a solopreneur. So this might not apply for staff per se, because you don't yet have staff. Yet, what's one thing that you do in your business to create a more inclusive environment for LGBTQ people and others who often feel excluded by employers? So this could be something that you do in terms of subcontracting work or identifying people to refer work out to, etc. I'm just interested in hearing more about how you approach this, often because the work that you are doing is encouraging these very, very large systems, government agencies and such, to do similar actions, but on a bigger scale. So is there something that comes to mind?
Actually, yes. I usually try and find another person to partner with, another consultant or another person who has skills in areas where we're doing policy work or development work or trainings. Having multiple people with multiple opinions and the ability to come at your audience from different perspectives, I believe really helps provide value. So when I have the opportunity, I will bring in, for instance, some of the trainings we did. I had another facilitator with me for all of them, and that's developed into an ongoing program through one of the large agencies here. So it's an opportunity to leverage what I have as far as my experience and contacts, and then look at my community. And I do a lot of volunteer work across the community. So I'm able to look at who has the resources, has the expertise to complement what I'm trying to get accomplished for the particular engagement that I'm in, and ask them to come in. And obviously I'm dealing with a lot of queer folk that have unique perspectives, so I try and bring them in.
That's such a great model, and thank you for sharing that. I want to switch gears now and take a deeper dive into talking about identity. So for you, did being LGBTQ influence your journey to become your own boss?
To some extent, I would say yes. I retired in 2009, so I had 40 years in the corporate world, and I was in information technology. So year 2000, I did some outside consulting during that time frame. So I had a little bit of a framework to put things in. When I started looking at my volunteer work, I have always been very fluid in my presentation with the law enforcement and justice people that I engage with. So I've always felt comfortable with my identity and how I express that identity in various groups. That helped me look at how I would base my identity within my business. And it gave me a framework that said that identity is important to the work that I'm doing, because I'm doing work pretty much focused in the trans and gender nonconforming community within law enforcement and justice. That then also becomes a little bit of a question about, does that become a barrier at some point for interaction? But I've had enough experience and enough of a relationship with a broad base of different agencies. I'm able to use references from those agencies and organizations that really help overcome some of that. Frankly, I don't think there's a lot of people that feel comfortable engaging in the kind of work that I'm doing. So looking for a organization that I could partner with as an employee just doesn't seem to exist out there, or at least it's very hard to find.
On the topic of barriers, it's natural that barriers come up as we're managing our own businesses. And I was hoping if you could give us a specific example, sharing a time where it was more difficult for you to be an out boss. So this could have been a moment where you were challenged with bringing your authentic self to work because you were afraid of losing business, potentially a client, or you just didn't feel safe. And as you share this moment with us, if you could obviously be as specific as possible and just let us know what was going on for you and how your business was impacted.
I am based primarily in the Portland metro region, which is pretty supportive overall of queer folk, but I do work across the state. So as I get into some of the areas that are more conservative, it becomes a conscious question about how much of my identity, do I feel safe expressing my full identity? And sometimes that becomes a focus of safety, frankly. And that is something, frankly, I'm still a little struggling with at times when I get into a facility that I haven't been in before. Exactly how am I coming across? How, it's a conscious decision of how open are they going to be to having somebody come in and present a gender fluid identity, something that may be non-binary. Do I present more feminine? Do I come in more conservative? It is a conscious decision about what communities I'm in, and how I'm engaging people in that community.
On the flip side of this, you've mentioned safety as being a key concern as it relates to your gender expression in particular, and going into environments that are very challenging in some respects. I'm thinking about prisons, jails, working with law enforcement. So in the context of that work, can you share with us a moment where you successfully leveraged being an out boss, your LGBT identity, to benefit your business? If you can think of a specific example here that could provide some inspiration to folks who also have similar concerns of covering certain aspects of their sexual orientation or gender identity, that there are instances where you don't have to do that. And in fact, your sexual orientation, your gender identity, if you fall under the LGBT umbrella, can actually be an asset. So can you share an example on this particular question?
I'm thinking of the interaction that I have with particularly the corrections staff as you're entering a facility at what we call the gatehouse. It's like the security gate into a facility. And often those are rotating people. There's different people there. And I have sometimes 5 or 10 minutes we're waiting for some activity. Sometimes there's been a lockdown in the facility and I've got to wait there. And I have an opportunity to talk to some of the staff that's there. And sometimes that's an opportunity to really have that one-on-one connection with people that you may not get at other times. And it's really helps to have that identity that they may not be familiar with, and there's nobody around, none of their peers are around. It's usually a single security person at the desk. And it gives me an opportunity to really have a personal relationship with those people. And often that then becomes important throughout the facility because those people will go back to their other units and work with their other peers, and they then can have conversations that carry on.
On this item of success, your job is to, in some ways, open hearts and minds and to push officials inside prisons, jails, working, in law enforcement, to think of the needs of LGBTQ folks. And from how you're describing your gender expression, you're really having positive one-on-one interactions where you are, just through those interactions, helping move people from a place of unfamiliarity to knowing, hey, I know Danny and Danny's cool. And so, building more internal buy-in through those relationships. And I think that that's really, really powerful and hold space for other folks who might not feel comfortable in bringing their whole selves to work. So I really thank you for sharing that with us. So for right now, we're just going to take a quick sponsorship break, but please don't go anywhere because when we return, we're going to jump into our bonus round.
HR and diversity professionals. Are you struggling with engaging LGBTQ talent? Do you stay awake at night worrying about limiting litigation risks? Have you considered seeking support around these concerns, but just aren't sure where to turn? Look no further. Rhodes Perry Consulting offers you solutions with the Engaging LGBTQ Talent A to Z certification. This proven 4-week mentorship program delivers skills, offers support, and connects you with other professionals committed to transforming themselves and their workplaces. Learn more about this cutting-edge program by visiting rhodesperry.com and use the promo code RPC for a 10% discount. Take action and visit rhodesperry.com.
Welcome back, Outbosses. We're now going into our bonus round where we'll have the chance to get to know Danny just a little bit better, gain some insights on how we can bring our authentic selves to work, and then we're going to learn one way to stay in touch with Danny after we're done today. So Danny, did your LGBTQ identity hold you back from taking the entrepreneurial leap, or did it speed up the process for you?
I think it sped up the process because it was the kind of work that I needed to formalize, but it also held me back at the same time because I wasn't sure how I wanted to. When I think of a business model, I think of what is the image that business model is putting forward, and I didn't have a clear picture of did I need to, how did I want to structure that business with that marketing component.
And in one sentence, what does it mean to bring your whole self to work?
Be authentic.
That's short and sweet. I love it. What's one personal habit that helps you master yourself and your business?
Juggling priorities.
And how do you master juggling the priorities?
Long time ago in one of my business classes that I took, they had a little acronym that I always think about, and it's SUG, S-U-G, seriousness, urgency, and growth. And you look at your priorities and look at where they're going is, and I use that filter to help focus what my next task need to be.
I love it. SUG. So that will be in the show notes. Name one thing that you readily delegate in your business to stay focused on what you're good at.
Procrastination.
If you can figure out how to delegate that in a systemic way, I think you've got a whole new business on your hand.
I guess it goes back to my comments earlier in the program where I talked about partnerships. Mm-hmm. And it's division of work when you have a partnership. I think that's an important way that you delegate. It's not so much because I don't have staff. It's not delegating to individuals. It's building the tasks that you have and building accountability and holding each other accountable for what your role is in those activities.
Can you share a book or a podcast that has contributed to your success as an outboss?
I did a lot of management classes. I was actually looking at doing a business degree. And in the corporate world, I had supervisory responsibilities. I think it's a composite of things. I can't really point to one thing. There's been a couple podcasts about management that I've listened to, but I think it's an overall composite of things. I really couldn't point to one thing specifically.
It's just because you're so busy, so it's hard to consume when you're keeping the lights on. So totally understand. So before we go, can you please share one piece of advice to inspire the next generation of outbosses to take the entrepreneurial leap?
I would say we all have an opportunity to be our own boss if we're passionate about the work that we're interested in. It's looking for how you connect that passion to a formal structure that we call a business. And I think sometimes it's hard. I think we get bogged down, but things like a limited liability corporation, at least for me, was very simple. And I was surprised at how simple it was. So sometimes it's how do we navigate all the pieces, and sometimes the pieces are much simpler than we expect.
Thank you so much, Danny, for inspiring fellow outbosses today. All of your insights have just been so powerful, and just recognizing how we show up to do our work every day. And I really want to encourage people to stay connected with Danny. So Danny, can you share just one way that we can stay in touch with you before we go?
The easiest way is through my email, dlrosenconsultingllc@gmail.com.
Great. And we will include the email address in our show notes. So for now, thank you again, Danny, for being on the show. And Outbosses, thank you for tuning into this week's episode. For now, please be sure to check out the show notes for highlights from today's conversation, ways to stay in touch with Danny, along with all of the valuable resources and information that we learned about today. And until next time, please keep being your authentic selves 100% of the time.